Events in Syria are also up for discussion in Brussels, where European Union leaders are meeting for the first time since the former dictator was ousted. They have to decide how to engage with the country's new leaders. One of the issues up for debate is whether to ease sanctions imposed on the Assad regime. But as Rosie Birchard reports, that won't be straightforward.
The European Union is making a diplomatic comeback in Syria, reopening its office in Damascus after more than a decade of downgraded ties, when the bloc vowed zero contact with the Assad regime. But Brussels seems much more open to talking to the Islamist rebel group who toppled him, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS.
We will intensify our direct contacts with HTS and other factions. We care about Syria's future, and we have to be there on the ground.
That's despite HTS still being a designated terrorist organisation by the United Nations and the EU's own vocal criticism of the group in the past.
We also condemn the systematic practice of HTS to unlawfully detain, torture and murder civilians living in areas under their control.
As the EU weighs up how supportive it wants to be of those now governing Syria and whether to lift broad sanctions imposed over Assad-era violations, it's trying to make its conditions clear.
We need to send a strong message to those who are in power now in Syria to build a government of coalition, including all the minorities, respecting the international law, international humanitarian law.
Some EU members want more.
I think it's also important to look at conditionality because regarding the Russian military bases in Syria. We want the Russians out.
But some experts warn this kind of ask could keep Europe on the sidelines.
We risk to derail the process and let it go in ways which might be actually not conducive to our interests. Europeans need to be realistic because, until a couple of weeks ago, and even now in a way, we are not really an influential actor in Syria, unfortunately.
And there's another reason why some states may seek to swiftly secure ties in Damascus. It's linked to the well over 1 million Syrians who sought safety in Europe over the past decade. Earlier this year, a group of countries led by Italy pushed the EU to soften its opposition to Assad in a suspected bid to make it simpler to deport Syrians from Europe. Though that effort failed, the bloc does want to reduce irregular migration. For now, the EU vows no one will be forced to return, while it's so unclear how safe Syria will be.
Let's get more on this from DW's Brussels Bureau Chief, Alexandra van Namen. Welcome, Alexandra. Do you expect EU leaders to find common ground on Syria?
Well, I think that most leaders are indeed on the same page here when it comes to Syria. I have seen the draft of their declaration that they're expected to agree on and that will be published later today. And in this paper, leaders are stating that the fall of the Assad regime is an historic opportunity to reunify and rebuild Syria. Of course, there are differences, nuances with Germany, for instance. They have presented a concrete plan, 8 points, 8 demands that they have in talks with the current rulers of Syria. There are others that are saying it's important that fundamental rights, women's rights, rights of religious minorities are respected in Syria, but they're also saying that it is important not to be too naive. So there are some differences, but I think that leaders, of course, understand what is at stake there, the security situation for the whole region. And of course, then the question, as we have seen in the report, whether the many refugees that fled to Europe will be able one day to return home safely.
OK, this will also be the last summit before Donald Trump begins his second term as US president. How concerned are EU leaders?
Well, some of them are very concerned indeed when you consider that they will be discussing the matter behind closed doors. There will be no written conclusions afterwards. There are only few leaders in the EU that have a rapport with President-elect Donald Trump. First and foremost, of course, Viktor Orban of Hungary, but also Giorgia Meloni of Italy. French President Emmanuel Macron has recently invited Trump to Paris. He has organized a meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, but some members of the European Union are concerned, for instance, about the announcements that Donald Trump made with regard to potential tariffs on foreign goods coming into the US. That would have a big impact on Germany. But I think the most concern is here focused on the future of Ukraine, because we all know that Donald Trump has said he wants to end the war very quickly, the madness, as he put it, and the Europeans want to be then at the table, and they want no dictated peace, as the German Chancellor put it. They want no peace that would be decided over the heads of the Ukrainians.
Okay, thank you for that, Alexandra. Alexandra von Namen in Brussels.